Dregs, we talked about Marner last night on the quiz, and we had the whatever you want to call it question with Rantanen. But as far as
you
Marner,
love that question, right?
Oh, yeah, I really
What was
did.
What was it?
Yeah, what was the question?
The question. This was the
go
quiz
ahead.
question. Who do you think is a better fit next year on right wing, Mitch Marner or Mikko Rantanen?
Oh, all right.
But as far as Marner is concerned, Dregs, all kidding aside, do you think his camp and the Leafs are just confident or comfortable to just let this thing play out and then check in when the dust settles and said, what are you thinking here? Or if it gets to that point, does it get a little bit greasier? How do you think everything will play out?
Well, there's time on the side of both here because Mitch is never going to be a trade pawn on March 7th. He's just not, right? And so I'm sure that the preference for Brad Treliving would be that Darren Ferris, who represents Marner, gives him a call and says, hey, why don't we, get together when you get back off the road and let's have a conversation. You know what the cap projections are for the next 3 years. And year 2 and year 3 are somewhat written, as they say, in pencil. And I'm not really sure what that means. How much is it going to be adjusted? Probably not a whole lot. The Players Association and the league aren't signing off on that and releasing it the way that they did last Friday unless they're reasonably sure. Right?
Darren, is it a conversation, Ender, if the Leafs say we're taking kind of the stance of Colorado and we don't care about projections? Is that a conversation, Ender?
No, I don't think it is. But I think that Brad would want to know what Marner's stay-home number is. And, he probably has in his own mind, along with everybody associated with that management group and everybody that invests the time that they do in crunching the numbers. They have a percentage number of what makes sense. And frankly, I don't know what that is. I'd be surprised if it was lower than $13 million times 8. And that's Toronto's stomach. So how much more is Mitch going to get on the open market? Maybe a lot more if he wants to play outside of his hometown and in a market that, isn't, or with a team that isn't as close to winning a Stanley Cup that he's currently with the Toronto Maple Leafs, surrounded by what we assume are a collection of his buddies in a core. So, look, I mean, there's still time, but now that the cap projections are there, it sort of throws out, if Ferris's position, and this is a bit of his MO, and I'm not being critical, it's the way he does business. He likes to march his top free agents to free agency when given an opportunity. So when you look at this year, you look at Marner, you look at Sam Bennett. He represents Sam Bennett. Well, they've done a lot of negotiating in Florida. It's a bit weird that Sam Bennett is kind of last man standing, isn't it? Mm-hmm. When you think of the extensions that have been afforded and what Bennett brings to the Florida Panthers. And I also get, you bring up Colorado, at some point as an organization, you do have to be willing to cut bait. And I still don't believe what has been speculated on Mikko Rantanen. I don't think that they ever got to a place where there was a hard line. This is the highest we're going to pay you. I'm sure there were conversations that were hinting towards that, but it never got to that point. And who knows? I mean, Chris McFarland, the Avalanche, may learn to regret those decisions in the not-too-distant future. We're going to find out. But I think that the heat turns up in Toronto after the Four Nations. And maybe the media heat turns up. I think that the media has been real good to Marner and Tavares. They've respected those scrums. You're not going into a scrum in January asking Marner if he's engaged in contract negotiations yet. But as you get close to March 7th, isn't that a fair question to ask? He's not going to like it, but it's an interesting one, especially now with the cap projections. I think that there should be a higher level of expectation from the Toronto Maple Leafs and his group to bring them what that package looks like so that the Leafs can digest and then make an educated call.
Well, don't you think, too, I mean, you guys had it on the quiz last night. You got me thinking. So, you got a scenario where you got some money coming off the books. And again, this is all have to play out with how much success you have in the playoffs here. So, you go deep into the playoffs and Marner's a big part of it, then you want it. But if things pivot the other way, I mean, take a look at who's available. Would you Mitch Marner and John Tavares or Sam Bennett and Mikko Rantanen. That's like that.
Yeah.
I mean, that's what you could be in on technically.
So you are the quizmaster. Like, we've never truly examined or outed the quizmaster, Noodle. So you're just pretty much saying that you're the guy.
No,
That's basically what was just admitted to. This is breaking news. I love it.
I'm not the guy,
Insult
but I'm just
or compliment?
No,
Compliment always.
compliment.
Well,
I'm just thinking out loud here.
Is that arrogance of the market, though? Not the arrogance of the Toronto Maple Leafs, the arrogance of the market. Like, are we absolutely sure that Mikko Rantanen, if he doesn't extend in Carolina, is 100%? Look, there are going to be a number of teams that go down that road with Rantanen if he gets July 1st. And in their own way, shape, and form, they'll find a way to get that message conveyed to him before July 1st. That's just the way the business operates, right? So if he decides that Toronto is an option, that's what's going to make it really super challenging. Or a Bennett, and I'm sure that Treliving and his group have had those conversations multiple times. But I'm going to back up a little bit here too. I think that Treliving and the Maple Leafs have a high level of respect for what Mitch Marner brings to the team on a nightly basis. Like everyone else, they would want and they would expect that the playoff numbers are going to change this year. That maybe needs to be a must, even though you don't have the luxury of that. And that's not a determining factor going into the negotiation. I honestly think if Marner came in and said, here's my hard number, and it's 13.25, whatever that number is times 8, Toronto might sign it because that's how much they value the kid and the fact that they'd like as much as anyone to have his statue out front of the building. Yeah. Hometown guy, all of that, but that's up to the player. And if they don't engage between now and March 7th of the playoffs, this conversation about Mikko Rantanen, if he hasn't extended, Sam Bennett, Tavares go down the list, it's going to get more loud and more loud and more loud. And that's just going to make things more uncomfortable for Marner and the group.
Well, I do find it interesting, the conversation of how much weight playoff success is actually going to have on their plans. Because this is why I think
should be a lot, Hayes.
Well, it should be, but I don't know. Like Dreger,
it can't,
just said.
It can't.
Right.
How can it?
Well, why wouldn't it, though? Why wouldn't it at some point?
Well, because it's July 1st, the playoffs are over. Like, you don't have the luxury of that advantage unless, and again, that's why we're even having this pie-in-the-sky Mikko Rantanen and Sam Bennett, all of that. Like, if all of those players are in the same swimming pool on July 1st, okay, all bets are off. All bets are off because at that point, Marner's decided that he wants to really see what that open market is going to show him, both in location and in dollars. You can only get 7 years, but in dollars, right? And the money will be there. Of course it's going to be there for Mitch Marner. He's a world-class player.
Yeah.
But how much does it mean to stay in your hometown and try and continue to win the Stanley Cup? And I don't think that Toronto's going to lowball Marner. I really don't. I think they're happy to get into that negotiation and get it done sooner than later.
Well, and that's what I'm saying. Like, again, these guys have collectively been here for a long time, and there's two different ways you can view it: the evaluation of the player, but also the core. And that has been a part of the conversation forever, and that's why I think the chatter has been muted in large part because I think the market is waiting for the playoffs, and whether it's Marner, Tavares, both of them, how do you play individually, but also how does the team do?
Yeah.
Let's say Marner's just unbelievable through 7, plays great, but they lose again.
Yeah,
like that's what I'm wondering. Like, does it matter at all? Because if it doesn't, then if you're the Leafs, you might as well call now. Get it done before the playoffs. That serves your interest because then whatever happens in the playoffs is irrelevant, evidently, because you just want to make sure you keep the players. But,
well, and I'm in the camp, Brian, just to interject here. I am in the camp, and look, obviously Colorado wasn't. Colorado was worried that Mikko Rantanen was going to get hurt. They made a decision with Makar coming up that they couldn't afford to have McKinnon, Makar, and Mikko Rantanen. They just they couldn't make it work. And then maybe that's a multi-billion-dollar owner who doesn't want to spend $114 million on his salary. Okay, so they made that call. I'm in the camp that believes that, okay, you're not going to trade Mitch. Obviously you're not. If he decides that the grass is greener somewhere else, okay, reinvest his $13+ million. And then that's where it gets tricky for management, because it's not that simple. You don't bring in one player, but maybe you bring in two. And if you've got the Tavares money on top of that, that's 11 schmil clean off the docket. And then you have a conversation about Morgan Riley. Like, if you really want to, that's when you hit the core of the Maple Leafs. Big if here, they don't do well in the playoffs. You reinvest the money in the free agents, and you make a decision on your blue line and whether or not you move forward with Morgan Riley, or now's the time to consider what a change might look like and what a trade value might be.